What's cracking, traders? XehrFelrose here, bringing you some Pokemon Go Battle League content. Today's video, we're going to be updating the Master League PvP IV deep dive for Palkia Origin form, which is now, I think, one of, if not the top Pokemon in the whole Master League. This thing's a dominant pick, and today we're going to be covering Palkia Origin against the Master League meta. I've also included some of the relevant megas from the Mega Master League, because I know there's also some grassroots tournaments that some of you do participate in, and megas are also allowed in there. So a good bit of information to be gleaned from this. We're going to be going through each IV range from 12 to 14 compared to the 15 100% IV to see what matchups are dropped because of us giving up some stats. And at the end, I've also included timestamps in the video in case you want to just skip ahead to the fun stuff, but at the end we're going to be talking about the recommended IV spreads for Palkia to take on the Master League. There's some terms to go over before we get into the nerdy stuff here in this video. I'm going to assume that this is your first IV deep dive, and if so, welcome in. If not, welcome back. Breakpoints is the first term that we're going to go over, and that's going to be an attack stat point that allows you to deal 1 additional damage in a given matchup with a faster charge move. And those are most effective when used on shorter fast moves, which Palkia has Dragon Breath, a 1-turn move. And so its breakpoints are often going to be a little bit more noticeable than something like Incinerate on Ho-Oh, which is 5 turns long. Bulk points, inversely, are a defensive stat point that allow you to take 1 less damage in a given matchup. And if we talk about zeros, 1s, and 2s, those are going to be the 0, 1, 2 shield matchups respectively, and any combination thereof as noted in the video. And all matchups in this video we're going to be assumed as even energy unless mentioned otherwise. We're also going to be using standard move sets. You can always simulate this stuff yourself, however, going over to PvPoke and using the Matrix Simulator. Near the end, we're going to be discussing Premium and Thrift IVs, which Premium IVs are the spreads that kind of grab all of the essentials plus some nice to have matchups. So for example, if there's a fringe matchup against something that may not be as common, but it's nice to have because it lets Palkia assert further dominance in the Master League, you might be included in that. But Premium is going to include both, whereas Thrift might give up on the nice to haves in order to maintain just the critical stuff for Palkia in the Master League. We're looking at a Best Buddy boosted that'll be notated by double B's BB. It adds 2 power-ups for 1 level to your Pokemon when it's equipped as your buddy. And if we talk about CMP or CAP, charge move priority or charge attack priority, that's when both Pokemon throw a move at the same time, and the one with the higher attack stat will go first. We're not talking about just the attack IV though. In the Master League specifically, that might be the case, but generally speaking, the raw attack stat is what determines a CMP tie winner. So now that we've gone through some of that vocab, with the key wins and losses for Palkia in the Master League, I feel like it's got a really nice spread. Palkia is one of, if not the most flexible Pokemon in the entire format. With those super spammy Aqua Tails, it prefers to have its signature move, Spatial Rend. However, if you don't have one with Spatial Rend, you could absolutely get away with Fire Blast or even Draco Meteor. I've been nuked into oblivion by both of those many times, and so you can't go wrong either way. But statistically speaking, Palkia will perform at its optimal with Spatial Rend and Aqua Tail. Using Dragon Breath as well. Dragon Tail has the same stats, but Dragon Breath, being a 1-turn fast move, offers more flexibility and allows you to sometimes even get more damage and energy in, depending on the window with which your opponent's fast moves allow you to operate with. But as far as wins, we did mention the 1-to-1 shield situation with Crown Zacian. That's a really important matchup, I feel, to be able to maintain, because as Zacian is usually a dominant answer and response to Palkia, being able to flip that matchup is very nice. You also take a win against Crown Zamazenta with Metal Claw, but you lose if it has Ice Fang. You get both forms of Duskmane and Dawnwing's Necrozma, which is incredible because Duskmane Necrozma used to be an answer to Palkia, and now the Aqua Tails just hit it so fast that it can't keep up. Black and White Kyurem are also wins because the Spatial Rend is so quick to fire off with those Dragon Breaths, and Zygarde also going to be dropping in here as wins if you land the Spatial Rend. Eternatus, Lunala, Kyogre, and Ho-Oh round out the list of wins for Palkia in the Master League, whereas its losses are typically centered around things that do dragon damage that aren't dragons and fairies, especially Florges, some other fairy types, Xerneas. But Dialga Origin is something that is coming back, and I'm going to actually try to do a deep dive for that soon as well. But it's back because Palkia is back, essentially. Dragon Tail Groudon, also really interesting to me in this new meta with Palkia being on so many teams. It's a very good core breaker of the very common Zacian Palkia core if Groudon's able to take that matchup quite consistently. Now, before we talk about the IV stats, I just want to take a moment to check up on what Palkia gains by equipping a Best Buddy boost. You're going to be grabbing your Palkia Origin mirror in all even shields in the 0s, the 1s, the 2s, but we're also going to be getting the 0 shields against Crown Zamazenta with Ice Fang, and that's one that could be important if you're willing to Best Buddy your Palkia and you really want that matchup. There is a way to win it. If something requires your Best Buddy boost in order to maintain it, though, you can guarantee that this is based on a Hundo Palkia. This is going to be a very tight amount of spreads that are going to allow you to win that Crown Zamazenta matchup, so just keep that in mind, but those will be included in our premium spreads for sure, because that's a very nice matchup to be able to maintain. You also get some matchups against Melmetal, Therian Landorus, Golisopod, and Shadow Ho-Oh even in the 0-2s. You're able to flip Primarina with Charm, which is interesting because Primarina is the only one Pokemon in the entire list of 100 things that I have that I check against in these videos. It's the only Pokemon in the 2-0 shield situation it can't beat, so it's very interesting to be able to flip it here with the Best Buddy boost. We're going to grab break points against Dawnwings, Necrozma, Reshiram, and Zekrom, and then bulk points against Shadow Magnezone, Therian Landorus, and Tapu Lele. Again, none of those really seem like they flip any matchups either way, so it's not mission critical to have the Best Buddy boost just to get those things, but they're nice to know that you get them if you have your Best Buddy boost equipped. So first, we're going to look at Palkia's attack stat, and this is going to be with no Best Buddy boost on the Palkia and no Best Buddy boost on the opponent. I'm going to look at all 4 different situations for all 3 levels of attack stat so that we can really see at what level we're starting to gain and lose matchups, so that helps us make an informed guess at the end of what IV spreads we want to be able to target to be able to maintain these matchups. Mega Rayquaza and the Mirror are the only things that show up at 14 and 13 attack, and Mega Swampert ekes onto the list down at 12 attack, where we're losing a breakpoint to the Mega Swampert, as well as losing when the Swampert has a shield advantage over our Palkia. Against the Best Buddies, the Mega Swampert jumps up to the 14 attack marker, and we're also seeing Lunala and Zygarde added onto the list here, as well as Togekiss down at 13 attack if they have the Best Buddy boost equipped. As low as 12 attack, though, we're just tacking on Kyurem Normal and Zygarde to breakpoints that we're losing, and the matchups are still the same aside from the Yveltal that now is added onto the list in a 0-1's tie to a loss. With Palkia on the Best Buddy boost and the opponent's not, we are losing our breakpoints against Reshiram and Zekrom if we thrift on our attack stat at all, but we're also losing the Dawnwings Necrozma breakpoint and Mega Rayquaza if we go further down. So it's up to you if you think those are important to keep or not. Personally, if I'm Best Buddying my Palkia, the absolute minimum that I would even consider is 14 attack, and that's if I'm going to gold bottle cap it later. And the reason why, if you notice, the attack stat for a 14 attack Best Buddy Palkia is actually higher than the attack of a 15 attack non-Best Buddied Palkia. You see you have 253.5 versus 252.9, so you do win that CMP tie. However, if you're against the Mirror in a Best Buddy situation where the opponent has Best Buddy, you do lose that CMP tie, and you also lose that matchup. However, aside from the Mirror, we're going to be grabbing Mega Blastoise at a shield advantage on their part, and Avalugg in the 1-2 shield situation. Both of them are going to be able to drop our Palkia if we go down to 13 attack or lower. And then Mega Swampert's going to be grabbing itself back on the list here down at 12 attack if it's got a Best Buddy boost equipped. Next, we're going to look at Palkia's defense stat and identify what matchups we're dropping if we have to drop down below 15. So down at 14 defense, we're going to see Therian Landorus and Tapu Lele were actually on the list before the update, and Therian Landorus is still going to be able to take that 0-1 shield situation from Palkia if the Palkia's got 14 defense or lower. Shadow Ho-Oh also finds its way to win the 0-2 shield situation when your defense is dropped at 14 or below. That is a 1 HP survive with all of your dreams intact kind of situation against Shadow Ho-Oh with a Palkia, but it has to have a 15 defense stat and a high HP as well to be able to keep that matchup. 13 defense, we're going to see a few more things, but most of them are just fluff here, honestly. Mega Gardevoir and Gallade here on the list with Confusion, and we're also adding Meloetta and Yveltal, which Yveltal is the only one able to actually take a matchup, but it's that 0-1 shield situation that we talked about earlier, and the list gets a little bit bigger with Single Strike Urshifu and Shadow Gyarados able to take some 0 shield situations from us, and some extra bulk points lost like Eternatus, Charm Primarina, Shadow Mewtwo. There's a few other ones on there as well, but most of them are just like Mega Master League kind of stuff, but it's good to know just in case. Now, when Palkia is without its Best Buddy boost against Best Buddied opponents, you're going to see a lot of the same things on this list at the top that you saw at the bottom of the last one, but some new additions here. Again, still with that Shadow Mewtwo, the Primarina, and the Mega Lucario Eternatus on this list. You're also going to see things like Shadow Lugia, Jirachi, Salamence, and Mega Garchomp show up on this list if you drop down as far as 12 defense in these situations, and Marshadow's even adding itself onto the list of some 0 shield situations that's able to win because of it. Now, when we're taking a look at Palkia with its best buddy boost versus the non-best buddied Pokemon, there's really not a lot here that draws my attention aside from that Crown Form Zamazenta with Ice Fang, Zero Shield situation popping up when we drop as far down as 13 defense in this situation. So again, that's non-best buddied Crown Zamazenta. If you give them the best buddy boost, you immediately lose that matchup if they have the best buddy boost equipped and you're at 14 defense or less. So that is a matchup where you have to determine if it's important for you. And if it's not as important, then your defense you could honestly thrift as far down as 12 if you're only looking to keep that Shadow Ho-Oh matchup, honestly. Most of the other matchups that are going to be fairly uncommon, Therian Landorus not nearly as prevalent as it used to be, and most of the bulk points that we lose here don't flip any matchups, aside from a small number that you really won't see a whole lot of these Pokemon, like Yveltal and Shadow Gyarados, which are very uncommon in the meta anymore. The last stat to look at is the HP stat. Let's see if Palkia offers us any room for wiggling here. At 14 HP, you're immediately dropping the non-best buddied Shadow Ho-Oh 0-2 shield matchup, and so that opens us up once again to a opportunity to draw that line in the sand to say, look, if this is important, then you have to have 15 HP. If it's not a big deal, again, Shadow Ho-Oh is not the most common thing. It's not like Crown Form Zamazenta or Crown Form Zacian or the Origin Palkia Mirror. Those are things that are definitely important because you're going to see them a lot. But Shadow Ho-Oh, I mean, maybe once in a while. So if you're okay with dropping that, you can honestly take yourself down quite a bit here, because the only other things that show up here is a 2 shields loss to Palkia Origin as far down as 13 HP. And then you also start to see the Crown Zacian 1-to-1 shield situation if you drop down below 169 HP, which again, I'm counting that as a very important matchup for us to maintain. So as far as the different HP weights on Palkia, they get affected with Crown Zacian now creeping up to our losses on the 13 HP, so 170 HP will guarantee us Palkia winning the 1-to-1 shield situation regardless of if Crown Zacian has the best buddy boost or not. You do still also pick up that loss to Palkia Origin. However, I will also highlight Duskmane Necrozma down at 12 HP is something that we're dropping in the 1-to-1 shield situation. So while not as dominant as it was in the past, Duskmane Necrozma is still something that I think is a very nice pickup for Palkia in the Master League, and so I would like to try to keep it if I can. So I'm drawing that line at 170 HP because of Crown Zacian. That also is going to end up including the Duskmane Necrozma. So as we look and see the other weights of HP, you can see the Crown Zamazenta appearing once again, 171 HP. Dude, this thing is not letting go. With the best buddy boost against non-best buddy meta, you immediately drop that matchup if you thrift on any stats. So unfortunately, Crown Zamazenta is something that you can really only maintain if you have a hundo, basically. It's what it seems like to me. But if you don't care as much about Crown Zamazenta, I know I've said it like 2 or 3 times at least at this point, it's just something to keep in mind. I'm really looking for any situations where I'm losing the mirror matchup and the Crown Form Zacian matchup, because that's going to be far more common in any Master League format than Zamazenta is, just because of the fact that Crown Form Zacian is so dominantly strong compared to its shield wielding brethren. If everything has the best buddy boost, again, we're losing Crown Zamazenta with anything less than perfection here. But again, other than the Crown Form Zamazenta, I'm not really seeing anything other than maybe Melmetal and some Urshifu matchups that are nice to have here. But generally speaking, Palkia seems very forgiving if you're okay with giving up some of these really interesting matchup wins that it normally wouldn't be able to have without having those perfect IVs. So what do we want to look for with Palkia? If you've skipped ahead to this point, hello, welcome in. Good to see you. We went over all of the matchups that get affected in the previous slides. I didn't mention every single one by name, but if you want, you can always pause or screenshot these slides to be able to grab information if you need to save it for later. Also, this video is not going anywhere either, but the critical matchups that Palkia Origin needs to be able to maintain, at least in my opinion, is absolutely at least the Mirror and Crown Form Zacian. Crown Zamazenta is an incredibly tight window of stats to be able to maintain that matchup. You have to basically have a hundo with the best buddy boost in order to maintain that matchup as a win. However, as some nice to have matchups, the ones that I've picked out here personally, Duskmane Necrozma in the 1-to-1s, you need 169 HP, which does fall under the 170 HP required to maintain all different situations with Crown Form Zacian in that 1 shield matchup. I think Shadow Ho-Oh is also worth mentioning here. It's a nice line to have because it still meets that 170 HP with the Crown Form Zacian. It just depends depends on your defense. And so as far as IVs go, you, again, need to have 100% perfect IV with Best Buddy boost to get the Crown Zamazenta in all possible scenarios in the Zero Shield situation. However, if you're okay with giving up that Crown Form Zamazenta, the 3 spreads that are able to keep Zacian and Palkia in those shielding scenarios that we care about is a Best Buddied 15, 15, 15, 14, or 13. You can only thrift on your HP stat if you want to maintain those 2. However, that does not mean that you cannot build a Palkia with a different IV spread. I highly suggest and recommend in these videos, as these are mostly meant to inform. They are not to tell you that your Palkia is bad just because it can't meet a certain matchup. It's just here to inform you that, hey, if your stats are down at this level, you will be forced to give up this matchup. And so instead of seeing this as a problem, we can also opt to just find ways to play around it. For example, if you know that your particular Palkia doesn't quite have the stats to be able to handle the Zacian matchup, you just play around it accordingly. Don't stay in the matchup if you know you're not going to win it, or you play it out expecting to lose the matchup and play the rest of the game accordingly. However, I will say that Palkia Origin has a massive amount of benefit to be gotten from both its Best Buddy boost, but also a future bottle cap if they ever give us another gold bottle cap, especially because they've decided that we still aren't allowed to TM Spatial Rend and War of Time on the Origin forms. I think that being able to bottle cap a Spatial Rend Palkia is one of the best uses for the item if we ever get another one. Now, this is a list of IVs that can keep the matchups that we care about, aside from Zamazenta, except the non-best buddied version. So if you're trying to beat non-best buddied Zacian, non-best buddied Palkia Origin, these are the spreads that are going to allow you to still do that, but you're going to need your best buddy boost regardless. Again, I personally would not build a Palkia with less than 15 attack. I would definitely do the research because 15, 14 defense is pretty usable in this meta, and as far down as 11 HP in some cases if you don't mind certain matchups. Palkia has the potential to be very forgiving in its stats if you don't have a 100% IV. However, it also gains a lot of things by having its Best Buddy boost equipped and by being a 100% IV. So I know that hundos are not the easiest thing to come by. Hopefully, while I wouldn't recommend some of these spreads, they do the job based on the stat points that we want to hit to maintain those matchups. So just a little closing slide. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy this style of content. If you do, please drop a comment below on what deep dive you'd like to see next, and like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm getting back into the groove of doing these deep dives after having covered the new stuff of this massive recent update to the Go Battle League. I'm also happy to answer your questions down in the comments if you guys are wondering about your Palkias or if anything that you'd just like to have answered. I try to respond to all of the comments that I see, so let me know if there's anything I can do below. And I know this last part, some of y'all may roll your eyes into the back of your head, but if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so just by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Helps the channel grow. Thank you regardless of how you decide to interact with this content. I'm just glad that you're here. And if you'd like to take the support just a little bit further, you can join as a member here on YouTube or on Patreon or Medify. All 3 of them are valid platforms to subscribe to the channel and get access to my Discord server, as well as early video access to some other perks as well. Check out the pinned comment and description for the links. And regardless of if you decide to support with a membership or if you're just here to watch the videos, thank you very much, and your support is appreciated. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.